Launch, South Korea's presidential office held an emergency meeting of the National Security Council. Let's go live now to our chief Blue House correspondent, Moon Connyoung. Connyoung, how exactly is the top office taking the North's missile launch that happened this morning?
Well, Mark, not too well, I would say. Obviously, North Korea's missile launch today is a direct challenge to South Korea and the U.S. and the rest of the global community, as has been said, because it comes just days after the UN Security Council adopted the harshest yet sanctions resolutions against North Korea to rein in North Korea in terms of its nuclear and missile programs. Now, within an hour from the missile launch, South Korean President Moon Jae-in convened an urgent meeting of his National Security Council, which lasted over 70 minutes. Here's his spokesperson, Park Soo-hyun.
Upon being briefed on North Korea's missile launch this morning, President Moon immediately ordered the launch of the Hyunmoo-2 ballistic missiles in a simulated preemptive strike, and said this is the time to make all-out efforts to ensure the UNSC Resolution 2375 is thoroughly executed.
Now, his spokesperson also told the media that President Moon ordered his government to be fully prepared against an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, and biological threats from North Korea. Mark, these are things that North Korea has also been threatening of.
Yeah, that's quite worrying language. We generally don't hear things about EMPs and biological threats. But Connyoung, even in the wake of North Korea's latest and most powerful nuclear test to date that just happened slightly over a week ago, President Moon had not ruled out the possibility of talks and engagement with North Korea. Does today's launch change anything in President Moon's mind?
Well, Mark, you're right. President Moon Jae-in, despite continued provocations from North Korea day in and day out, has never taken off the engagement option with North Korea off the table. Even today, during the security meeting, President Moon said the global community and South Korea together should examine ways, diplomatic means, to get North Korea to abandon its nuclear and missile programs. But today, at the same time, he did order his military to put together stern and firm effective measures based on combined defense with the U.S. to cope with the growing threat from Pyongyang, and said this is no time for dialogue with the North. So maybe later, maybe sometime other time, but with North Korea's relentless provocations, this just isn't time. Remember, today's missile test is the 15th by North Korea this year alone, and the first since North Korea detonated its most powerful nuclear bomb to date on September 3rd. That's only 12 days ago. The launch also comes just days before South Korean President Moon Jae-in will meet with U.S. President Donald Trump and Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at the UN General Assembly in New York next week. So we'll have to wait and see whether these leaders, along with the rest of the global community, will enact tougher sanctions on the North, and that may include a complete cutoff of oil and other fuels imported into North Korea, particularly and mostly from China. So we'll have to wait and see whether that happens. Mark?
Well, definitely, it would be nice to see China and Russia step up to the plate now. Well, thank you very much, Connyoung. That was our Moon Connyoung reporting on the latest from the South Korean presidential office on this latest provocation. Now, we're going to stay with the reaction